Hello everyone, my name is Pulak Ghoshal and today's topic is energy flow, pyramids of numbers, biomass, energy, which are important topics of chapter 14 ecosystem patterns components. So what do you understand by the energy flow? The energy flow is the amount of energy that moves along the food chain. This energy flow is also known as calorific flow. So as you can see in the diagram, there is sun is the uh, only source of energy for all ecosystems apart from some of the deep water systems, underwater system. The major source of energy is the ecosystem of is sun of the ecosystem is sun. So sun gives a part of energy from the sun is taken up by producers, or we can say that primary producers. The incident solar radiation, less than 50% of it is photosynthetically active radiation. So this radiation is taken up by the producers, and they further take up some amount, capture only 2 to 10% of the PAR, and this small amount of energy sustains the entire living world. So this small value, that is 2 to 10%, is then transferred, some amount is done on the heat and other processes of the plant, or the primary producers, and then it is transferred to the other consumers. And producers, if they die, they will also decompose, or if the consumers die, they will decompose, and again it will break down the organic compounds into the complex organic compounds into the inorganic or nutrient pool, and again this is enriches the soil, and it is beneficial for the primary producer. So further, ecosystems not exempted by the laws, or we can say that laws of thermodynamics. That is, first law of thermodynamics uh, states that energy neither created nor destroyed, it can only be changed from one form to other, which is also followed by these energy flow. And second law of thermodynamics states that as energy is transferred, more and more of it is wasted. So both the laws of thermodynamics are being followed in the energy flow in the ecosystem. So they need a constant supply of energy to synthesize molecules they require to counteract the uh, counteract the universal tendency towards increasing disorderliness. So why is the energy flow in ecosystem important? The energy flow in the ecosystem is important to maintain an ecological balance. The producer synthesizes food by the process of photosynthesis, a part of which will be taken up by the other organisms. The and so on. If for it is for a grazing food chain, then it will follow 10% law of energy flow. Next is energy flow producers. So major primary producer is a green plant or a photosynthetic plant which can carry out photosynthesis. So green plant ecosystem terminology called producers. In terrestrial ecosystem, major producers are herbaceous and woody plants. Like primary producers in aquatic ecosystems are various species like phytoplanktons, algae, and higher plants. There are other food chain, rather they make up they not only form a part of a food chain, rather food webs form. Such animal feeds on plant or another animal, and in turn food for another. So chain is formed because of the interdependency, and the no energy is trapped into an organism remains in it forever. As we all know, either it would be taken up by any other organism, or it will eventually die and it will decompose. So the energy will not be sustained in an organism through for a long and forever. So all animals depend upon plants for their food needs. The animals, or we can say that the organisms which depend upon them, are called consumers and also heterotrophs. Consumers and the heterotrophs will also considered as consumers. Next is consumers. So consumers, if the food they feed on the producers, the plant, they are called primary consumer. If they primarily they feed on the plants. Similarly, if they feed on the primary consumer, they will become secondary and so on, tertiary. As you can see, grass, then grasshopper is the primary consumer, then the secondary consumer is bluebird, and then the tertiary consumer is the snake, and later apex predator, that is predates over the snake, and then if it dies, then it will decompose and again will enrich the nutrient of the soil. So similar way, another food chain has been described, that is grass, goat and man. So the consumer will, this way the energy would be transferred to different animals, or we can say the organisms. So there is a proper energy flow between producers and consumers. Next is energy flow by DFC and GFC. DFC, detritus food chain, and GFC, grazing food chain. So first of all, in the figure we can see that there is a difference table. Here the transfer of difference, three major differences, that is in the transfer of energy starts from the producer, that is in the grazing food, while it is starts from degenerating or dead organisms, decomposing the dead organism. Here the less energy flows through this, while more energy flows through this. In aquatic ecosystem, it is major conduit for energy transfer, and in terrestrial ecosystem, it is the major conduit. So in terrestrial, detritus, and in ecosystem, grazing food chain. And next is that also the decomposers and heterograms. Detritus food chain has mainly fungi, bacteria, etc., and several saprotrophs. They meet their energy requirement by degrading dead organic matter. These are also known as saprotrophs. Sapro means to decompose. Next is that decomposers secrete digestive enzymes that break down dead and waste materials, which we have already studied in the chapter in the topic decomposition in previous topic. Next is aquatic. We already discussed that grazing food chain is major conduit for energy flow in aquatic ecosystems. Here is another example of grazing food chain we discussed in previous slide, that the grass, then grasshopper, then the bluebird, and further the snake, and then then the owl. Similarly, this is an example of grazing food chain. While there is a detritus food chain, that is dead leaves, microorganisms, then wood louse, and then blackbird will be eating this. So this is a detritus food chain. So some of the DFCs are prey to GFC animals, are prey to the, yes, and in a natural ecosystem, animals like cockroaches, crows are omnivores. So they help in interlinking the grazing food chain as well as the DFC, that is detritus food chain. So so detritus may be connected if a snake directly dies. In the previous slide we say that if the owl or the snake or the any other organism, if the plant itself dies, so that will lead to formation of dead leaves, and that will be further uh, further decomposed and converted into an organic material and enrich the soil qualities. So this way detritus cycle may be linked with the grazing food cycle as well. Next is trophic levels in an ecosystem. So every an ecosystem, the various the place occupied by an organism in the natural surrounding or in a community is known as its trophic level. So if you are a producer is the first trophic level, then second, then third, on the basis of the uh, energy, and not only energy but also the transfer of the energy takes place. Like first primary producer would have the highest energy, then primary consumer, then follow on. So these are the trophic levels. As you can see in the diagram, the topmost and at the apex there is man and other carnivorous organism, or there can be omnivorous organism in any of these steps above and below. And then third trophic will have small carnivores like birds, fishes, wolf. Second trophic level where zooplankton, grasshopper, cow. then the phytoplankton, grass, trees are the primary producers. So when any organism dies, it is directly converted into dead. Or so this can be also this is not provided in the diagram, but also if any of them die, they will also form a detritus cycle. They will form a part of detritus cycle, and dead biomass that serves as energy source for decomposers. Next, energy flow through different trophic levels. So here you can see that each trophic level has a certain mass of living material at particular time called standing crop. So it is a very important definition that a standing crop is at a particular time that organism or trophic level, the organism has a certain mass of living material. Now that is standing crop is measured. How is standing crop measured? So it is measured as the mass of living organism, or we can say dry weight, or the number in a unit area. So number or mass, both can be the option to calculate the standing crop. Biomass of a species is expressed in terms of fresh or dry weight. Dry weight is more accurate because it has less water content and more of the energy would be expressed on the exact what amount of uh, energy, or we can say that biomass it has. Next is the number of trophic levels in the grazing food chain. As we know that the 10% rule, that is 10% of the energy would be transferred to the next trophic level. Okay, so each trophic level would have a lesser or lower energy. In nature, it is possible to have many levels: producers, herbivores, primary consumers, so many. And food, it could be not only a food chain, it would be a food web. So here you can see that first trophic level, some will go in the process of heat and later would be transferred to the other organisms. So this is a flow of energy can take place in different trophic levels. So trophic level is that place that an organism occupies on the basis of the energy content, not only energy content but also biomass and the number in a unit area. Next is ecological pyramids. So a proper pyramid has a base, uh, broad base, and it narrows down to the apex. In the diagram you can see that there are three columns, that is the pyramid of number, pyramid of biomass, and pyramid of energy. So these are the three major pyramids which we are going to study, and the base of each pyramid is producer or first trophic level, while the apex represents tertiary or top level. So here you can also see that the pyramid of number and pyramid of biomass can have both the can have both inverted pyramid as well. That is, the lower, or we can say that the primary one has less in one, or the level which is in the bottom can have small value, while in energy you will always see that the energy at the bottom is higher than the always higher than the above one. So this is always followed in pyramid of energy, and it is not different for the aquatic ecosystems, while it is different for pyramid of number and pyramid of biomass. So next is some prerequisites. Before starting the pyramids, we should know some of the prerequisites, like that any calculation of energy content or biomass or number has to include all organisms, not some of them, as no generalization we make will be true if we take only few organisms. So we have to consider all of the organisms. Uh, Next is also given organism may occupy more than one trophic level simultaneously, and this is one of the most one must remember that trophic level represents functional level, not a species as such. So a species cannot be always, so that one species, and the next is one species can be also in one or more trophic levels, okay, at the same time. For example, sparrow is a primary consumer when it eats seeds, fruit, peas, and secondary consumer when it eats insects and worms. Also we can say that on this category, we also human also comes in this category, that they can be in more than one trophic level. Okay, that is we can and omnivores as well. So pyramid of number. So pyramid of number than herbivores are more in number than in carnivores. So in a general view, we'll always know that the number of primary should be higher, but there is an exception to the generalization. So that is, if you were to count the numbers of insect feeding on a big tree, what kind of pyramid would you have? You got, now add and estimate the number of small birds depending on those insects, as also the number of large birds eating the smaller ones. That is, the insect will have a higher value, the producer will have a smaller value. Okay, so herbivores are dependent on these parasites and these insects. Okay, and this small birds, and the small birds, larger birds are dependent on smaller birds. But the tree is only single tree. Or in an aquatic system, phytoplanktons are less in number as compared to the zooplanktons. So this can be another example. So this would be covered in biomass. So first is the first pyramid is shown as the tertiary consumer, secondary consumer, primary consumer. So you can see that only three number of individual, then as we go down to the bottom, the highest number of individual is in primary producer. So pyramid of number can be both inverted as well as normal pyramid of a number, that is increasing, decreasing minimum at the top or at the apex. It can be both inverted and the normal pyramid. Next is pyramid of biomass. This biomass, herbivores are more in biomass than the carnivores. Plant has more uh, biomass. Therefore, there are exception to this also, this generalization as well. As we can say that pyramid of biomass in sea also and is inverted, because the biomass of fishes far exceeds that of phytoplankton. So biomass of fishes is more, as they feed on zooplanktons and zooplanktons feed on phytoplanktons. So the and the big fishes feed on small fishes. So it is again pyramid of biomass for a forest and pond has been classified. So for a forest, it is always lowest number in the top and highest biomass, sorry, lowest biomass at the top and highest biomass at the bottom, that is producer, then herbivore, then carnivore. While in the case of a sea or aquatic ecosystem, the condition is inverted. Next is pyramid of energy. Pyramid of energy is always upright, can never be inverted, because when energy flows from particular trophic level to a next trophic level, some energy is always lost as the heat, and there is a you can say that unidirectional flow. Okay, so there is a unidirectional flow of energy. So here we can see that 10% law is followed. Each bar pyramid indicates amount of energy present at each trophic level, that is primary producer has the 10% of what it gets from the PAR, that is the photosynthetic radiation. Okay, so solar radiation, so which can be converted for the which is about 2% of that energy will be is taken. Then further 10% and 10% is transferred to the this. So first of all sun, then it takes about 1 to 2% of it, and then 10% law is followed. Next is limitations of ecological pyramids. So first is, it does not take account same species belonging to two or more trophic levels. So it is not accounted for the omnivores, as omnivores can be present as well as in primary consumer as well as in the tertiary consumer or secondary consumer. It assumes a simple food chain, something that almost never exists in nature. That is, in nature it always exists as a food web or complex food webs. It does not accommodate a food web, because because it is showing it cannot show that much complexity in the diagram. So moreover, saprophytes are not given any place in ecological pyramids, even though they play a vital role in the ecosystem. As we have studied, the maximum biomass is present in the detritus, because the plants also die, all the organism dies, as well as other organism feed on them, and the parts which is left over is also decomposed. So maximum biomass is of the biomass and energy is also with the detritus, but it is not never included, is not included in the ecological pyramids. So these are the limitations of ecological pyramids. Next is practical relevance. As we all know that proper flow will determine proper ecological balance, and which is necessary for every organism on the planet, and the feeding of different organism in different ecosystem. It shows efficiency of energy transfer. Condition of the ecosystem can be monitored, and any further damage can be prevented if we have a proper knowledge of the energy flow, food web, food chains, and the ecological pyramids. So the most significant is that we know how the energy is being transferred and utilized, and so that for a proper balanced for providing a proper ecological balance. Next is, have you ever thought if all the plants on earth disappeared along with their other photosynthesizers like algae and bacteria? The world would be barren and sad, and it would not have nothing, carbon dioxide would no longer be cleaned out of there, and is also, is it trapped heat, and the conditions would be not livable. So it is very important that the ecosystem should be preserved, and the proper balance should be there. uh, Not only primary producers, but all the components of a food chain and food webs should be properly conserved. So for energy, photosynthesizers are the, but the major role it plays is played by the photosynthesizers, as they are the only ones which are able to convert the sun's energy into meaningful biomass, or energy that can be later on transferred to other organisms. So this gateway should not be affected because of human activities or other environmental uh, impacts of global warming, etc. So for energy to flow into food webs, networks of organisms that one another, it is very important that the photosynthesizers are not removed, and the if they are removed, they will be will be cut off, and that other organism would run out of food. In this way, the photosynthesizers lay the foundation for every light receiving ecosystem. Thank you.